This is going to be the day. Today is going to be the day that I can stream it to Facebook again. I really believe that. Let's let's see.
All right, I think I'm in, Ben.
You are.
Okay.
Let me see here. Start the Zoom meeting. They've changed this again. Let's see. No, I don't need a username and password. Let's see what happens. Let's start sending it or not. Yeah, it looks like it's trying. Did not go live. You've got to be kidding me. Oh, let's see. We've got Kyle here, Pat's here. I'm not sure who Thor is, but off. Don is there. I mean, I do know who Thor is, but I don't know,
Well,
who
it's me
Thor.
in Minnesota.
Oh, hey, me in Minnesota. Who is me in Minnesota?
Thor Weeby. I'm
Thor
a
Weeby.
I'm a licensed radon tester and mitigator in the state of Minnesota.
Cool, cool. You
How
know,
you
when we
doing,
get
Thor?
when we get a lot of people into the chat, I don't always see uh because the videos start to disappear, and so I don't always see who's jumping on. So we're always happy to see some new faces and hear some new voices. And so, if you have you been with us before, Thor?
No, I haven't.
Oh, great. Well, we hope we can not waste an hour of your time today.
I installed a lot of sump pump systems and crawl spaces, so I'm always looking to do a better job.
Absolutely. Well, if you're not already part of the Facebook group, we've got our videos from the last couple of weeks are popped up in there, and then I also put them up on the YouTube page as well. So you can see those conversations from the previous weeks. Um, so let's
Well,
see.
and Thor, these people get so sick of hearing me say it, but looking to do a better job, that's the secret to success. I'm 100% convinced. We talk about it over and over. It's too easy in this society for people to badmouth you on the resources they have, and so it's more important than ever that we seek to do the best we can do. Because I don't buy anything that has a 3 rating, not when there's something right next to it that has a 4 or 4.5. And neither do any of you. Are you going to buy a fishing rod if it's rated at a 2.5, or are you going to buy the one that's rated at 4.5? So it, it's reflected into everything we do. I certainly maybe I don't know a guy that's good at working on garage doors, and I don't have a name in my repertoire. So all I'm going to do is look at the reviews, and I'm going to do the same with the radon guy. So, looking to do a better job is music to my ears for sure. It's something I've preached for my 25 or more years. And I guess I'll continue to preach that until people tell me to shut up. So,
How about that? I got it live on Facebook.
all right, accomplish
uh,
something.
yeah, apparently just you just keep clicking the same thing over and over again, and it makes it show up. So there we go. Uh, so we're live on Facebook again. I did look at some software that's going to allow us to potentially put it on YouTube at the same time. But man, I'm happy to get one out of two. I'm batting 500. That's okay.
Sure, sure.
Well, uh I know that Ron, or was it Ron that was asking, or was Pat that you were asking about doing some show and tell this week? Somebody in Alaska. Pat's driving. Be safe, Pat. Don't do something.
Well, Ron had the question, Ben,
Yeah,
about in Alaska, there's so many crawl spaces, and
yeah.
then you get the good old sump pump and the crawl space effect. And having done them for 25 years, we think we have a pretty good idea, but there certainly may be somebody out there with a better idea. But Ron in Alaska asked that I demonstrate it more than just say it. He's like me, the visual helps a bunch. So I'm kind of crowded here in my office. It's not like the videos we've done 100 times where I'm on the job site doing them, but I think I've got a couple items up here, and if everybody's okay with it, we'll start by getting Ron's question out of the way about doing a crawl space sump basin. And always a challenge. You know, we worked with several things to make that happen, but the challenge is in the fact that you don't have a concrete floor to attach your lid to. And so you need to do it in such a way that it's removable for replacement maintenance, because it's too easy to forget that factor. You can't just glue something up there and get away with it, so to speak. So
Hey,
I'll pull
bud,
out.
can you pull that mic closer to you?
Yes, I've got it pretty close, but we can get it closer, or I
Okay.
can talk louder.
No, it's just it's better close. There you go.
Okay, I got it
Perfect.
closer yet. So
Yep, that's even better. Thanks.
okay, good, good. Well, I kind of brought a few things to demo this, but let's start by, I brought a scrap of radon barrier film, but this is what I refer to as a donut ring. But all it is a 24-inch sump lid with the center cut out, 19 inches or whatever. You can cut out the center to get another sump lid out of it, so you get a 2-for-1 deal. But we call this a donut ring, for lack of a better word, and you put it in the crawl space flat before you do the barrier film. So I'm going to hold that a little bit of an angle. Then you you put it over the sump basin, of course, and you can even anchor it with some landscape stakes or anything you want to if you think it's necessary, but it's movable to a degree too if it slides around a little when you do the barrier film. But we have used landscape stakes to help us. But anyway, all you do is put it, once again, you put it over the sump basin, and this inner diameter is about the size of most sump basins, which is just over 18 inches, as we all know. So it is fairly relevant to the external dimension of a sump basin. Lay it on top of it. Put your barrier film over the entire crawl space. And then we're typically, if you've already pulled the sump, if you haven't pulled the sump, do a couple cuts to make your sump pipe work through it. And then, Ben, if you have any problems with this, let me know also, because you've done enough filming of me doing these. And then typically what you can, or what we do sometimes, is now you've got the sump where you want it.
Hey,
You
David, why don't you tilt that camera down just a hair? You don't have to hold it. You can just tilt the camera itself
okay.
downward a little bit.
All right.
There you go. That'll work.
That's kind of difficult. That's on my computer screen. So we've got it where we want it. And so now we know that sump basin sort of lines up at the inside of it. So we're going to at least do something that gets us close in terms of making a cutout. And all we're going to do is we're going to take and we're going to make a slot across it. Okay. Maybe we're going to make an X. Now we got our pipe and our electrical coming through here if we haven't removed the sump first to make it easier. And then what we're going to do is, as soon as we're done with this, we're going to reach under here and we're going to caulk this barrier film. I don't care what kind of caulk you use. Usually the butyl we're using in the crawl space. We're going to run a little bead of caulk. We're going to push this down. Now we're going to come back with a second lid of the same diameter, in this case 24 inches. We're going to put it on top of here. Now all your pipe and your electrical is going to go through there, but the beauty of it is you've got a bottom ring and a top sump lid to simply screw together with, we typically use 4 stainless steel screws. So all we're going to do is drill the holes for the discharge pipe and the electrical. Then we're going to put 4 stainless steel screws in this, and we're going to match the top and the bottom, sandwich them together, and then the film is between the two. Now, before that, we'll probably do a better job on this X, even to the point of cutting it out in a circle, because all we care about is being able to sandwich the inner diameter of our sump ring, of our lid ring, to the film. So we're glued on the bottom. I don't glue it on the top. I screw it down. Then I run a bead of silicone here. So now, first of all, you got a solid base. You got the film sandwiched between 2 layers of 1/4-inch plastic, airtight. You got it easily removable to service or replace that sump. And it just works good because it's so plumber or homeowner friendly to remove that lid. It's every bit as easy as it is to remove a lid in the method we do on a cement floor. So you're basically, under the film, you're creating a product that's going to allow you to install a sump lid. Very simple. And it works very good. And we've experimented around with a lot of products. And once again, it's simply a 24-inch disc. We used to sell these, and it kind of no one wanted to buy them because, truthfully, I'd just soon you made your own. I don't need to be making these things, but if you make your own, you get another sump lid by cutting the center out. But this works as good as anything because we have several challenges here, but the end challenge is making sure it's easy for the service to happen.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
I've done the ring like that, but I do not caulk the outside of the top lid. What I do use is a closed cell insulation, like for windows, that's got adhesive on one side. That way, if they need to get into it, they don't have to cut the silicone, because a lot of times then they're cutting the plastic and everything too. So, and then I bolt it down and it's still airtight.
Even better. I think that's a great idea. Great idea. We used to try to do that on regular sump lids with that. And then we would use these little clips and try to have no screws. Can you see that clip?
Yep.
We're sort of a Z clip. And excellent idea. Thor, I'm glad you're watching today because I think that's a great idea. The problem with the silicone is exactly what he said. When you pull it up, you got to find a way to redo it, and you don't have the kind of surface you do on a concrete floor. So excellent idea. I love the idea of the one-sided tape insulation film. Excellent idea.
Yeah, plumbers aren't necessarily very neat, so a lot of times you end up going back and repairing what they've destroyed.
Well, for sure. And we talked a little bit last week, Thor and other guys. We have a label made for our company that ties onto the discharge pipe, and it says, "Please call David Smith Radon Remedies."
Cool.
With any questions, this is an important part of a radon reduction system. And so we laminate that label, and it was a private label, so to speak. It's not anything we carry in our repertoire as far as a supply company. But we felt that strongly about sumps. I think we all know how important the sealing of a sump is to the health benefits of the consumer. But we also know that it's so, we talked about this over and over again. We know how it is so hard to get anybody to put it back to the degree that we've had it. So we always thought that particular label we made, it was about 6x9. So it isn't like it was just a little bitty label. It's about half a sheet. But we always thought maybe that would help because we think most plumbers and handymen are conscientious enough that if they knew it was affecting another function of these people's lives, then maybe they would spend a little bit more time with it. We talked a little bit about the danger of using sump lids for suction points, because that consumer and that plumber has such a misunderstanding or lack of understanding about radon that they'll take a 3-inch pipe and not put it back properly into the sump lid after a replacement in the middle of the night. They're sure not going to worry about the radon pipe, and they're not going to come back the next day and do it. So the discharge of air going out an open 3-inch pipe into just a Maverick. Gosh, I got a flow chart right here. You're talking about zero resistance. Maybe it would get up to 5 with the pipe resistance at 5 inches, 0.5 inches of water column. You got 200 cubic foot of air going up a pipe. So leaving a pipe open is a very detrimental thing, not only from the cancer causing effects of radon, from the environment of the home. We talked last week about how dangerous it is on these homes that still have the heater flues and the hot water heater flues, the 80% furnaces, because I just in the old days in Illinois, they made us test the flue before we left every home. And holy cow, I can't believe how many flues I found that were marginal, even before we started. So if you take a marginal flue situation and then you add 200 cubic foot of air a minute going up a pipe because a plumber or a homeowner didn't respect or understand radon enough to put a pipe back in a lid, then you very well could kill a whole family. Because, we're talking carbon monoxide now. That's not too much of a joking matter, even though I don't even leave a radon system without saying, hey, where's your carbon monoxide tester? But anyway, I don't want to get off track, but I think it's a good opportunity for people to make comments and questions. Thor's comment about using that weather strip's a great idea. It's something that we should have used more. We experimented with it, was a great idea, and didn't carry on through. What about on the wall? What are people using on the wall in terms of caulk and fasteners to help hold the film on the wall?
I use 70 adhesive, spray adhesive from 3M. I spray it on it and it's a contact, and I don't use caulk. I used to use it and it would fall off. I'd had callbacks, but since I've been using that, you got to have it well ventilated, but let it set up a little bit and you put it on there and it is sealed. You don't have to worry about it and spend more time.
Well, absolutely. I've had a little bit of experience with products like that in another part of life. And we talked a little bit last week. It's really, really hard to say this is better than this, because the invention of new products has just gone so fast that I know that the products you're talking about, Thor, have an amazing ability. So I've got guys that call me Ron in Alaska. I've got a caulk I like a lot better than butyl. We still use butyl because it's the recommendation of the manufacturer, but I've used some of those sprays too that you're not going to pull them off with a car bumper once you get that stuff up. We personally still use the butyl caulk with Christmas tree fasteners, and I think the secret, if you're going to use Christmas tree fasteners, is don't cheat. Use them every foot, and I think it gives it a nice look also. But as Thor said, there's other things out there, and there's other people's ideas. I think that the concept is we want to do the best job we can to keep it from coming off the wall. I'm a big believer in a 12-inch overlap. The federal requirement, as far as I know, the national code says a 6-inch overlap. Illinois requires a 12, and I'm so glad they do, because we learned a long time ago that a 12-inch overlap allows you to do a bead of caulk on the inside, and I'm a big believer in the tape made by the manufacturer for the product. A very, very good tape. So we use butyl caulk on the inside, pat it down, and then use the matching manufacturer tape on the outside of that joint. I say it 100 times. If I get done with a crawl space and it wouldn't hold water like a swimming pool liner, then I haven't done my job. But longevity is extremely important, and you know, the way we do walls and the way we do seams and joints are the biggest secrets to longevity. Other than I always say you got to make sure the plumbers and heating guys don't wear their golf shoes when they're in there. It's another thing we have to be careful of. But you know, we got to give that consumer a product that's going to stand the test of time. That's for sure. I think the national code is now. I heard through the grapevine. I hate to say these things when I could very well be wrong, but I think the use of just plain old Home Depot, what we call Visqueen, is now going to not be legal. I think they've tightened up the requirements so that some of the people that still go to Home Depot and get it off the bottom shelf, the black or the clear Visqueen product, I think that they're going to be out of luck or may already be out of luck. It's a product that I couldn't accept. I just figured that product, I've been in too many crawl spaces, the older crawl spaces where it deteriorated and disintegrated. And then I'd been in newer crawl spaces that had it on the walls and it was always falling off. So that was I always had a problem with that product, and I hope I'm right in what I heard, that they have now tightened up the specifics on the product you can do in a crawl space. Anybody else got any comments about crawl spaces? I was going to say one other thing. I lost track of it and it came back to me in that silence. I spoke on it last week. Every once in a while, at least in central Illinois, we're in the land of high water table. If we get into a crawl space that we think has ever had a higher water table or dampness at all, we use perforated black tile in crawl spaces quite often anyway to help the communication. We spoke of that last week. We went into depth about how the gap beside that tile provides more communication than the tile itself. We spoke about all that, but I also wanted to say one more time, we also use that tile for a second benefit. And we like the 10-foot pieces so you can run them straight, but we use that tile to elevate seams. So in other words, let's just say you're in a crawl space where the water table right now in central Illinois, I got a neighbor's got water in his basement, and he said, well, I've never had water in my basement. Well, now you do. So we get into a high water table time of the year, and that crawl space hadn't taken on water in 5 years, but it did. And when you're in there, you're gonna have clues as to whether it's ever taken on water. Well, if we have those clues, we run tile underneath every seam, the entire length of a seam. So let's just visualize a crawl space that's 30 feet wide and you got two seams running the length of it. We're also going to run a piece of 3-inch or 4-inch perforated black footing tile down the middle of each one of those seams underneath it, of course. But the reason we do that is to elevate the seam, because if that crawl space has a high water table once in 10 years, and it gets 2 inches high below that radon barrier film, it's not going to bother anything but the seam in terms of damage or penetration. It's not going to go through the radon barrier film, but it will go through the seam. And the first time you have to go in a crawl space with wet rags and buckets and wet vacs to pull up the water, and then to clean the mucky, dirty, filthy stains are on top of that film, you're going to say there has to be a better idea. And so I think all you guys have your own ideas, but I thought I'd throw that at you because it took me a little bit of time in the industry to realize, look, the weak point is the seam. What happens if I elevate the seam? It takes it out of the weak point scenario. I mean, if that crawl space is going to get enough water in the on the surface of the crawl space, if it's going to get enough water to penetrate a 4-inch tile, then those people need to get their house looked at. That's not the radon guy's fault. And sometimes we get into that where we're asked to solve all the problems of a home, but there is a line you have to draw between a problem that a consumer needs to fix with their home. But anyway, that's just a hint about something that's helped us a lot we're in a high water table area.
We have any more questions on?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got one. Putting a suction point underneath a barrier in a crawl space, is there a type of, or what size pipe do you usually use? I'm finding that the smaller I go, even though it's on a valve, I get sound. In the past, I've usually used perforated 4-inch sewer pipe, and that seems to be the best. But I'm trying to cut down the size of my piping going into underneath the crawl spaces and still being able to draw the air out of there and creating the vacuum bag.
Well, I think that's a great question. First of all, I think some of it has to do with the way you enter a crawl space, and I can leave for about 10 seconds and come back with a crawl space platform. But I'm a big believer, as we discussed last week, I'm a big believer in a vertical entrance into a crawl space. And the platform we make and merchandise here allows for a vertical entry. And then we will typically run in a larger crawl space, especially, or one we're concerned about noise at all, we'll typically run a tile up to the crawl, but we never want the vertical pipe going into the crawl. We only want it close to the crawl so we can take advantage. Since you weren't here last week, Thor, people need to take a look at the in view of a tile underneath a radon barrier film, and you get more communication on each side of that tile where you create the triangle, so to speak, the area that the barrier film spans between the floor and the top of the tile. So I think one of the mistakes a lot of people make, and I see it over and over again, where they can get lower numbers, but they think that they want to bring that tile under that platform when they are doing a vertical or even when they're doing a horizontal, and they want to run that pipe right into that tile. Well, technically, when you do that, all you got for communication is some mighty small slots the entire way of that tile until you get to the very end. And then a lot of times the pressure of the tarp will come down pretty much on the end. But I always tell people, think of it very simply as if you don't run it into the tile, you also gain the tile plus the area on each side of the tile that the elevation of the tile has created. And it's my belief, we very rarely get into a situation with a 3-inch. I can't remember the last time that we had a noise complaint. It's happened, but a noise complaint with a 3-inch tile going vertically into a platform. The platform gives you a 4-inch elevation, so we don't run it very far into the platform. With a tile coming close to the platform, but not under the takeoff, it gives you an awful lot of distribution of that air. And I don't see, I just haven't seen that to be a problem, but that vertical entry, I believe, is just utmost. And I spoke last week quite a bit about when I first went to class. I went to class and the guy teaching it, I came from the home remodeling industry, so to speak, in the carpentry industry, where you had to do an awful nice job or that lady wasn't going to pay you for her kitchen you did. And the first thing I saw was a person that teaching a class that ran a horizontal pipe into a crawl space, and he used radon tape, he used foam, he used caulk, he used everything in the world to seal the area that he had to cut in order to run that pipe under that barrier film, and none of it worked. So every time I went into a crawl space that had a horizontal entry, I noticed that it really wasn't sealed right after a while, or after somebody crawled around on it, maybe broke a seam loose. So I came up with the idea on the very first crawl space I did that I wanted a vertical entryway. So we created, in those days, we used 3/4 inch treated plywood, and I created a round platform, 18 inches around, with the proper size hole in the middle. And I elevated it on two pieces of 12-inch long, 4-inch footing tile. And therefore I used a roofing boot as a seal over that pipe. And so therefore I was able to do a vertical exit, a lot easier if I did want to run a
And
valve.
Belleville right now.
What's that? I'm sorry.
Oh, I think Kyle's. I'm going to mute you, Kyle. I don't think you knew you're unmuted.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess to finish that off, I just found that the vertical entry into a crawl space worked better, looked neater, and was more effective. And we even fine-tuned that to where we're making it out of basically sump lid material with a disc that is completely tight on a 3-inch pipe that comes down, similar to what I just demonstrated on the sump, where you got one platform on top of another. We've got a 4-inch, or we've got a 3-inch or a 2-inch disc that comes with each platform that fits very tight on the pipe, and you thread it on the pipe before you run your vertical pipe, before you glue it in. Then it comes down and it seals the pipe against the platform with a couple screws. So I guess, Thor, I guess, I don't know if, valving sometimes help and valving sometimes don't. So it's a good question that I'm not sure that I have all the answers for, other than I believe a lot of my problems went away based on the way we treat the help of the perforated tile and the vertical entry.
My biggest problem, I learned on my first job that I had a crawl space. I do a combination crawl space and sub slabs or drain tile. And to get best continuity or air movement underneath, sometimes you have airs like water takes the path of least resistance. And if it's drawing a lot of air from the crawl space, you're not getting the suction underneath the slab. So that's why a lot of times I put a damper on that. But I'll agree with you, coming vertically, that's what I do on all mine as well. And that way I can create a bladder sometimes, or depends on each one. But where I can, take care of 2, 3 different locations with one system.
I agree. As a general rule, we touched on this last week. As a general rule, the reason I provide a disc for 2-inch pipe and a disc for 3-inch pipe is the only time we use 3-inch pipe in a crawl space is if it's all crawl space. But my part of the country is loaded with the combination also. Many years they all wanted to add a crawl space behind the garage at the very least, but there's a lot of combination homes. And so we never run a 3-inch pipe from the main trunk line to a crawl space because we know we're going to want to zone it down anyway. So why spend the money and
Correct.
and the time and they're just not, you can't hide them as good. In other words, we run a 2-inch pipe to all combination homes and put a gate valve on it. I never run a crawl space secondary without a gate valve. And then what we typically do, this is some pretty general, simple things that many of you are going to say, what the heck is this guy thinking? But we shut that valve off to the crawl space, because my opinion is Thor's absolutely right. If a fan's capable of 200 cubic foot of air a minute, you don't want 180 of that coming from the crawl, because you've got to decompress that slab. So we close the valve on a combination home. And we're not talking about a crawl space at 600 square feet. We're talking about a combination home with a 400 or less crawl space. We close the gate valve all the way. We got one guy standing at the manometer, and let's just say the manometer is 1.2. We open the valve until the manometer only lowers a 1/4 inch. That's all we want, because I say as a sort of as a joke and sort of as to remember. I say if you have a computer motor and a straw and you seal a crawl space to the degree you're supposed to seal it, you can fix it, because it simply has no resistance in a crawl space. So you don't need a lot of volume. So if you've got a 1/4 inch on a manometer of volume added by adjusting that valve, it always works. It always works for us. We do a lot of combination homes, and I agree with Thor. If you want to open that valve, the chances are you've got an uneven balance of sub slab versus crawl, because the crawl is always open communication and the slab rarely is. I don't care if there's gravel under the slab, it's still not going to communicate as good as most crawl spaces, especially if you put tile under them. And so
Good advice.
our typical thing is just that. We want a valve on every secondary if we're doing a combination home, and we want to use that valve. We want to use that valve down to a 1/4 inch on our manometer. And there's a lot of people in this industry that think a manometer is not worth anything. I live by it myself in fan selection and in cases like this. That's a very good point, because I wouldn't have thought to bring that up, but I'm a full believer that, like I said, if you got a computer motor and a straw, you're probably going to fix a crawl space. So why in the hell do you want 100 cubic foot of air coming from it when you don't need it? In a sense, you're mining radon. It's one thing to remove the radon. It's another thing to mine more. Now, you can remove what you mine, but why mine it? So very, very good bunch of questions. Anybody else got a comment?
I didn't know if we had more on the on sump basins that we didn't get to a couple weeks ago, but or Pat, you got a question? Jumping on?
Oh, I was eating, so I was muted. Sorry. My only statement is I just can't wait till the day I don't have to climb in a crawl space again. You know,
I think I quit when I was 63 or 4, so that you can surely do it that long.
Oh,
I'm 74 and I still do it.
Thanks.
You got me beat for sure. I quit doing it.
Well, this whole stuff, I mean, to me, being a tester and everything, and I've helped design systems based on training I had from, Doug Clatter.
Okay.
American or something or other, radon technology laboratory or whatever. But that was 28 years ago.
Sure.
We used to install them. The bigger the pipe, the better, and the faster the fan, and the more CFM, the better. That was how we put them back then.
Well, it's another great comment. I mean, and I think I've been here 27 years, and Doug Clatter taught the very first class I went to. And so he's been around.
You do know him.
And,
yeah, he's probably changed his tune since then too. But
yeah.
Well,
if
your test came out too high, I say if your test came out too high, you just turn that fan up more. But we had houses where you walk in the door and the house is humming.
Yeah, it's we've learned a lot about radon in the last 25 years, that's for sure. And for instance, I keep referring back to state I work in. They do have an excellent set of rules, by the way. But the rule says lowest reasonably achievable number. Now, some guys cheat on that and say, well, I could only get it to 5, and that's the lowest reasonable achievable number I could get. That's not what that law is meant for. That rule is meant for. That rule is meant to be logical. If I'm only going to get a 3.8 with the smallest fan that I have, but I can get a 1.9 if I step it up a fan, that's what I need to do. But I don't need to step it up another fan that's a lot noisier and a lot more energy consuming for a 1.8. So in other words, there is a line you have to draw. But I believe that's another place that I use the heck out of a manometer, and most of you guys know that. I can tell you that, I've got fan flow charts. You know how much flow you're going to get with such and such manometer. And that's not the Bible either. The Bible is a test device. And neither is pressure field extension the Bible. The Bible is a test device. But but all these things are good clues for you. And I'm a full believer in you don't have to be around too long before you can sure estimate what the right fan is. And I've got customers that want to use an Eagle Extreme on every home because they think that that'll get them the lowest numbers possible. But that's not really necessarily true. And it's an extremely loud fan with energy consumption. If it's not going to get you any better numbers than a much lesser fan, then it is a mistake. And I think that's another analogy that the fan flow chart and manometer can help you do fan decisions. And I've done several classes on fan choices that way, and we can cover that again here better. But I think there's some very, very simple science in fan choices, and nothing about radon is 100%. You know, I always say the reason plumbers and heating guys always drop out of radon is they're used to doing, if I install a toilet or a furnace, it's going to work. If I install a radon system based on all my training and all my expertise, that doesn't really mean it's going to work. So there's that percentage that you have to scratch your head about, and that's what keeps us from having too much competition.
Hey, real quick, I just Pat and Thor, I wanted to let you guys know there was an echo and I wasn't sure which one it was, so I muted both of you guys. So if you want to say something else, just make sure you unmute, or you can just talk and we'll try to guess what you're saying. That's a fun game too.
We get through the little kinks. We get through the little kinks of things. Has anybody got any comments on what to do about these sumps? I'll continue that with I had a man in here today, just in my shop, coming into my shop to buy some radon barrier film that's reasonably local. And he said, you know, I had a sump basin last week and a guy insisted on pedestal sumps, and he had 2 of them in his sump basin. He said, I didn't have room for a viewport. He said, I didn't have room for hardly anything by the time I was done, but I also was unwilling to cut a sump lid into 3 or 4 pieces to do that. Well, most state and the national code says that sump lid's got to hold some weight, 150 pounds or something. And you go cutting on a sump lid much, and it's not going to if you don't screw a saddle to it, which complicates it too for removal. But anyway, make a long story short, we need to all remember that people insist on pedestal sumps. A pedestal sump was not meant to be covered. So this particular person worked with the homeowner to build a plywood box, 3-sided box, to go over the sump, and then seal it to the floor. I think they used a piece of gasket material and sealed it to the floor. Well, that may do it from a radon perspective. So this guy could remove this box if he wanted to service his sump pumps, his pedestal sump pumps that he wanted to maintain, because he was convinced submersible didn't last as long. And I'm not too sure he's not right. But here's the thing. We need to all remember, pedestal sump pump is not meant to be enclosed. It'll rust out and go bad in a hurry if you think you're going to enclose it in a sump extension or something like this, because the windings are open. You cannot put a pedestal sump pump in closed conditions that have humidity, or it's going to greatly shorten the life. And that's what I explained to this guy. And he said, well, the homeowner is really basically the one that did it. And I said, well, at least warn him. At least warn him. If you insist on pedestal sumps and you're in that much of a panic about a sump, personally, my opinion, I'd use a sewage ejector instead and up the size of the line. But just remember that a pedestal sump is not designed to be enclosed in a humidity area. It's not designed for that. You guys can look right in it and see the windings. So some people don't realize that. Most of you guys may realize that, and you may be saying, well, hell, don't you know I know that? But I think some of this stuff's good to throw out. I don't think I knew it for a few years, but I wasn't a plumber. So that was something that came in today. And unless somebody's got a real question in hand, I also had another phone call today I was going to talk a little bit about that was unrelated. And that's what we get into. It's not hard for us to get off subject, and I've kind of accepted that. But I had a friend in another state that's unregulated. Some of you may be in unregulated states, but he says, Dave, I need you to help me write a paper to present to my legislators to try to get them to regulate this state. And I said, well, you called the wrong guy to help you write a paper, but I will tell you what I think it should say. But I said, there also should be somebody that's at our national organization or somewhere that has some assistance for that, along with literature and proof. But here's what I say. In the first place, your biggest obstacle with anyone from a state senator to a homeowner or to a realtor or a banker is they don't believe in the effects of radon anyway. We've talked about that over and over. You can't see, hear, or smell it. It's hard to believe. So the first thing you have to do is present them with enough evidence. They really can't argue with the World Health Organization. You know, I quickly asked him, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were a scientist, because all the scientists say that that radon's killing you. So I think you'd have to be qualified as a scientist if you want to refute that. And I pour it right on him. I have no sympathy for him. But the first thing you would have to do is provide enough information, mostly written information, that says, hey, these World Health Organizations, and we're talking the whole world, we're not talking about the United States. These World Health Organizations say that radon's more dangerous than secondhand smoke. You guys have all kinds of regulations for smoking and secondhand smoke, but you got nothing for radon. Give me an answer here. So in other words, what I told him was, first get all the ammunition you can to try to make a believer out of them. If you're going to try to get one of them to sponsor a bill to make regulation happen in your state, if he doesn't believe in the effects of it, it isn't going to last long. So, and then the second thing I said was also include how many states are regulated. What do we got? 34 states regulated now. That's a pretty good balance, over 50%. So if 34 of the states think regulating radon's a good idea, then there might be something worth it there. And so I think that the other thing that I wanted to cover, if I was the one trying to break down a letter, was if you are in an unregulated state and anybody in the world can fix radon, people are under the misconception that if somebody took a magic marker and wrote radon on a pipe, they're safe. So I think that the other argument is, if it's regulated, there's a better percentage that a radon reduction system will truly be a radon reduction system. And we know there's exceptions to that, but I think we would all agree there's certainly a better percentage of somebody that has been trained and regulated doing a radon system than a builder or a plumber or a carpenter or a handyman or a homeowner. So, so that's what I encouraged him to try to formulate for the legislature. And any of us that are in a regulated state, I think we all agree we wouldn't want to go back the other way. So that's totally unrelated, but I think it made me stop a minute and think about what are the enemies? Why are these states not regulated? And they're not regulated because nobody believes in the effects of it. We need to change that. And they're also don't understand that it takes somebody trained to do a proper radon system to reduce the health risk. If I'm a state senator and the people in my area are concerned about the health risk of radon, they deserve to have that radon fixed in a way that truly does reduce their health risk. Can you do that in an unregulated state? Hell no. Can you do that in a regulated state? Most of the time. So anyway, that completely unrelated, but it did make me think today about how much we have to challenge, even after all these years, 26, 7 years for me. After all these years, we still can't get people to believe in the effects of radon. And I've tried to teach that in every way in the world, and it just doesn't work. And I always said, every one of us would be very wealthy if you could just see it, hear it, or smell it. All we need is one. Let's just say you could smell the effects of radon. Would we be wealthy or what? So it's a challenge that we're never going to get away from, but we have to keep pushing education. And I certainly encourage people on the national level to focus on education as a priority. So I think I got my lecture of the day in, but I think that was it's just something that struck me because this person was asking my opinion about what he could do to influence the legislature, and that all it's one really in the world we live in. From a political standpoint, all it would take is one. So,
and that the topic that you're talking about. So we don't have regulations in this state either. The state has some guidelines where they adopted some guidelines. But the problem is, people like the realtors go to the national website for the government that shows radon levels. We're a self-reporting state. Nobody spends the time to fill out those forms and tell them what the radon tests look like. So we look low.
Yeah. Yes.
But there was somebody recently took tons of reports, got them from all of us tester guys, a bunch of us. I turned in a whole bunch of reports and did a average levels, and our average household level for the guys that are doing the testing is 10. So
it's really not anything
to laugh at. You can't tell a realtor
that. Yeah.
Well, no, it's not, but it people use information that is not factual, and then so our realtors basically tell homeowners, oh, we're not a radon state. Don't just sign here that you deny radon testing, because that could kill a house sale. So
yeah,
they don't want it.
Yeah, it's tough, and yeah, Alaska is probably one of the slowest. Some of the states, I don't have any customers in Oklahoma or Arkansas. I don't know California. Isn't it funny? In California, very few people in that industry. I get calls from consumers in California saying, "Hey, Dave, I've been watching your videos. Do you have a minute to help me? There's nobody around here." And I'm like, an hour later, I'm still trying to help a consumer. And shame on you, Ben. That's the value of them videos you made me do. But yeah, it is a problem, and it's funny because the director we had in the state of Illinois, I thought was the best one that ever hit, but he used ammunition. In other words, it's like he said, the realtor organizations have so much money to lobby with, and he said, their office is right across from the state headquarters in our state capital. But every time he went to battle, he had the statistics, and he knew what the argument was going to be, and he had a counter argument that won every time. And he would end up, his counter arguments were so strong. I mean, really, the counter arguments about radon can't be contradicted. You just have to have the proof with you. But nobody can argue against the effects of radon if you're prepared. And he was always so prepared that ended up that the representatives of either the builders or the realtors never could argue with him because they couldn't argue with his numbers. And his numbers were easy, other than being very prepared to prove those numbers. And so you guys got a long battle in Alaska. But there's other states in the lower U.S. that have battles too. And I always laugh about how one of them's California. We always envision, my daughter, Lynn, that works here, that runs this place, she lived out there for 8 years as her husband's going through engineering school to U of I. And, everybody out there seems so health conscious, and we all have a certain perception of California and the people that live there, but they sure don't believe in radon. So once again, it's easy to get off track, but it's all good for conversation, and we have got to keep the facts in front of us. I think I'm guilty right now. But in my drawer over here, I've got some statistics that are just incredible. The same person I was speaking of used to do pie charts for us. And for instance, another good one, there's great ones out there, but another good one is you go to the dentist or you go to the doctor and they have to wear a lead vest before they give you an x-ray. And there's a statistic about exposure to radon. The average radon exposure is, say, 6.7 in my area. That average exposure to radon is the same as 150 x-rays, but we're not wearing a lead vest. So he's got statistics like that, and we can all get them. But that pie chart just amazed me, and I used to keep it with me and show it around because there's different pie charts that just totally even amaze me. Like being exposed to radon is so much more dangerous than the x-ray you get. Because how many times you sit in the dentist chair or the doctor's chair and they come in and put this big vest on and do an x-ray and you're thinking, holy cow, if that lady's this worried about this radiation killing her, well, what's it doing to me? And then they'll say, well, now you can only have 3 a year. Well, 3 a year is much less exposure than living in the 4.0 radon for a year, huge amount less. And so I guess keeping these stats with us are important, but you can't just keep a bunch of stats without having a proof behind you. Like I said in the beginning of this conversation, if the World Health Organizations, all of them, including the World Health Organization, all agree that it's cancer causing and all agree approximately on the numbers, even though the United States is much higher than the rest of the world, as we know. But if they all agree that it's cancer causing, then who the hell's going to argue it? Who really is out there to argue against the World Health Organization? So I guess we just have to, I'll never, as long as I'm still in this industry, I'll never quit working on it because everybody that comes up to me and you know, in the old days, you guys, some of you guys have been around a long time, but let me tell you how bad it was 25 years ago. I would literally get plumbing and heating guys and carpenters in my face saying, you know what, you ought to be ashamed of yourself being a rip-off artist. This is really, really bad. I never dreamed you were that much of a crook. And it was terrible. And it was really bad 25 years ago, let me tell you. And it's so we've seen some improvement, that's for sure. Comments?
That last comment, I had the same thing happen to me.
Yeah, it's really kind of sad. You know, I used to tell them people, I said, hey, you know, I wasn't raised that way. If you knew me, you wouldn't be accusing me of being a ripoff artist or being evil to anybody. But I don't have anything I can do to convince you. So all I can do is stand up for myself and tell you that that's not who I am and that's not how I was raised. But it is hard to change some people. And yeah, it's not going to ever happen with some. But how many of you carry around ammunition with you? Do you? You carry around some of those pie charts and them ammunition? You know, you guys ask me, I'll send you a few of them pie charts that are hidden in my file cabinet. But I'll send a few of them out to any of you that ask. I haven't pulled them up in a long time because I don't really have to go prove to anybody anymore, other than the more you guys do it, the busier I get, I guess, along with you. But that's an interesting thing. I hadn't even thought about them pie charts in a while, but they still surprise me to this day when I look at them because I think, holy cow, is that a good way to show it or not? And I also think that you have to be logical in how you do it. You know, everything you present has to be very easily proved, but it also can be overwhelming. You know, I think one of the mistakes I made when I was in the position is I took too much ammunition with me. And so therefore it became unbelievable because it was too much volume. But if you have 6 different pieces of ammunition with you and you use 2 of them at a certain stop, then so I got something from Kyle Kelly there about sending those pie charts to him. I'll be glad to make some copies and send them to people. And And Ben's smart enough to get the list for me. So we'll be sure to do that. So everybody else, go ahead.
Mine's a one-page thing I've had for, I think, since way back when I was in the training 20 years ago, but it's from the U.S. Surgeon General, I believe. It's their statement on radon.
Sure.
I don't know if you've ever seen that. And it says at 2.5, you should be installing in a system, and at 4.0, that's your, your trigger number or whatever. And it's very convincing.
Well, and I think that sometimes that doesn't resonate as much as like what I'm saying. This is going to get you worse than this many chest x-rays. Something someone's familiar with. Sometimes numbers are easy for people to not digest. So I think that I love those numbers, but I think that let me send you a few things and see if you can pick out some of them that might resonate to people better. I can tell you, our director did a very he would get calls all the time. Hey, my numbers are only 8, and so I don't have to worry about it. Or even my numbers are 4. Am I okay? And he would reply, well, is it okay with you if your children smoke 8 cigarettes a day? And they'd say, well, absolutely not. He'd say, well, then why is 4 okay with you? Because the number of 4 is equivalent to 8 cigarettes a day. And it sounds to me like you're okay with your kids smoking 8 cigarettes a day, or you wouldn't be calling me. So, and I think that is a statistic. Yep. I need to relook at that. Numbers play with me these days, but I believe that 4 picocuries is the same as 8 cigarettes a day. And the truth is, it'd take a long time for 8 cigarettes a day to kill you, but I don't need that factor. Mine's a 1.7, by the way. Yep. I wish it was lower yet, but I'll take 1.7. So I think that he was good at making it resonate. If you say, well, now the Surgeon General says this is dangerous, it may not be as effective as, do you have kids? Another thing I say is, excuse me. Another thing I always say to like a real estate group is a lot of females in real estate, at least in my area. And I say, well, how many of you have kids? And I would raise your hands. And so then I say, well, I got a question for you ladies with kids. Is it okay for your kids to be around people that smoke? No way. We don't let them around smokers. Well, I agree. My wife was so concerned about secondhand smoke that she would cross the street with my kids before she would walk by anybody who was smoking, because she didn't want my kids to ingest secondhand smoke. But you know what's confusing? The Center for Disease Control and the World Health Organization both said that radon is more dangerous than secondhand smoke. So do you allow your kids in radon? Or do you know if your kids are in radon? And so I found that to be effective. And it was effective just because I was making it personal. If it's okay, if you are that adamant about not letting your kids around secondhand smoke, what the hell's going on here? You got the World Health Organizations telling you that radon's more dangerous than secondhand smoke, but you don't even give a damn that your kids are around that. So it's not that I would word it that way, but I think the point of it is the more personal you can make it, maybe the more effective it is. But I also say that we need to find a way for neighbor to spread to neighbor to spread to neighbor. And one of the best ways I've found to do that is I would almost give away at times a homeowner test device. And I know that many professional testers have a bad opinion about homeowner test devices, but some of them have become very accurate. And the point of the matter is, it doesn't really, the only time a professional tester gets work for sure is a real estate transaction, and they aren't fit for them anyway. But if a homeowner has a homeowner test device that you've provided them, then some neighbor is going to come over and see it. I say this every time we talk, and say, what the heck is that? And when he explains it to them and shows them the number on it, they're going to say, oh my gosh, can I borrow that? Ben has plenty of good stories about this too. Or they're going to say, you know what? I got grandkids. I'm going to take this over to my daughter's house and test her home. or my mother. Ben tested his mother and father-in-law's home. Or I have always said, it's absolutely true, passing out one homeowner test device will get you 5 or 6 jobs before it disappears into the setting sun somewhere. And so that's another form of awareness. And once again, I know I'm glad they are not accepted for real estate transactions. I know that's a main way testers make their money, and I appreciate testers to pieces. But I do also know that these type of devices will create awareness, because if you're the neighbor and you see this thing, and you'll say, well, you know, my neighbor, he's kind of hypochondriac anyway. Now he's got this dang device that's reading the radon every hour, and he thinks it's a big deal. He paid this guy $1,500 to fix it. I think he's nuts. But you know what? I'm not doing anything. I'm going to research this a little bit. I'm going to look up the word. I'm punching in the word radon on my computer. And me and my wife's going to sit here and look at this. And then they're going to go, holy cow. Hey, neighbor, any way I can borrow that device? So in other words, we got to get the percentage up. But if we can get the percentage up on people that believe in the effects of radon, it'll help, because it's always been the greatest challenge in the 27 years that I've been around. And and I don't care whether you've been around 2 years, it's still the greatest challenge is non-belief. And anybody else got any comments about that? I got to leave here in a minute, but anybody got any comments about that?
To me, it's
I've
educating
encouraged people to use the home test and just let them know. Yeah.
I think I heard 2 comments, but they might have been on top of each other.
Well, Thor here.
Oh, you mentioned education.
Oh, okay. Yeah, educating the people. That's very important to me. And word of mouth, they want to know, what's that on the side of your house?
Sure.
And in fact, I've gotten 3 systems off of one person, and I didn't even install the system, but they seeing it, and then they went online and got those testing devices. And once they found out what it was in their house, they gave it to their kids. So I'll agree with you on what you were saying about giving those devices out.
I'm going to tell you a quick, unrelated end of the meeting story again, so I can show you how I can go from one subject to another. I had another person in here today, and talking about the test devices reminded me of this story. Every year until COVID, the health departments in Illinois, in all of Illinois, if they wanted to have radon dollars, grant dollars, then they had to go through 8 hours training a year. So the American Lung Association provided that training, and they asked them, you know, what would you like for training? And they kept getting these replies: we're sick and tired of sitting in a classroom. We want on-the-job training. So they called us up and said, what can we do? So we created some nice programs. And every year we let them watch us do a gymnasium one year. They followed us around doing a house one year. But the house we did, so 3 or 4 years before COVID hit and kind of killed it all, we were doing their CE credits for them. But this house that they did one year, they allowed the state to come in. The state set 3 or 4 different kinds of devices for 3 months before we got there. And to show you about another problem we have with radon is, within that, the average number was 8.9 when we went there to do the job. So we accept that. But 3 times during that 3 months, the number would have passed a 2-day real estate test. So had that house been tested at the magic moment of those 3 times within 3 months, it would have been identified as not a radon concern. So having said that, there's not ever going to change, but I think the real estate test cycle is too short. But I think that that is another argument for homeowner test devices because, you know, they typically get an hourly reading. But I also thought we need to all remember that I'm not sure how to handle this, but that's a very good example of people thinking they had two little kids. So had it been tested at that magic moment, they would have assumed for the longevity of the time they owned that home that their kids and their family was safe from the effects of radon. Now they could be huge believers in the effects of radon. And how many times do you guys get in situations where the mother is in tears because they're moving out of a house they've been living in 5 years, and they said, well, we thought the radon was okay. We were told the radon was okay, or we tested the radon was okay. Now we're moving out and found out I've been exposing my kids to this for 5 years. I feel like a horrible mother or father. And I'm really discouraged. And how did this happen to me? Why isn't anybody helping prevent me from doing this? Where are the health departments? Whatever. But anyway, I think another thing that we could have a long talk about as we're closing up in the future is what do we do? What do we do about people that are under the misconception that they're in a safe environment? You know, I'm a manometer manufacturer. I'm the second largest manufacturer of manometers in the world, but I would do anything to get rid of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 because everybody says, "Oh, my radon's safe. My little red device says it's 2." I'd rather see it A, B, C, and D because we could all figure out what 1, 2, 3, and 4 was based on A, B, C, and D. And I'd be glad to do it if the other manufacturers would do it. But that's another issue. How many of you guys, all of you, I know every one of you guys have been in houses many times where the representative of that home, the husband, wife, realtor, whomever, says, well, the radon's good. It doesn't need tested. That gauge right there tells me it's 1.5. And we need to fix that too. So we're going to talk about all kinds of things we need to fix. But here I am producing. I'd hate to tell you how many thousands of manometers I produce a year. And every time I look at that back plate, I say, you know, it cost me some money to fix this, but and if I fixed it and I made it A, B, C, and D, and people quit buying it from me because they wanted 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, what would that do for me as a distributor from a brain perspective? So we need to get that changed to a rule, so I wouldn't be the only one doing it. But that may sound small to some people, but I know all of you guys, if you've heard it once, then that means 10 times, 10 more people have assumed that. And why wouldn't they? If I didn't know anything about radon, I'd say, well, the gauge says I'm fine. That gauge says I'm 1.5. Hell, I got real low radon. All of them. So you can put all the labels on it you want, but when's the last time you guys read a label? I won't even read directions and put something together. I wait till I do it wrong or get in trouble, and then I ask my daughter to read the directions for me and tell me what I did wrong. So anyway, guys, be thinking about what you'd like to talk about next week, and we'll just try to keep this going if you guys are interested. And if I didn't do a good enough job on the Crawlspace platform thing, just call me up. I'll talk to you some more about it.
I do think a good topic one week would be what people might want to see different from, you know, suggestions on whether manufacturing or laws that we can take up to the powers that be or things like that. I mean, those are good conversations to have because, you know, especially when we see them in different parts of the country, you know, it affects some people and it doesn't affect others. And so, yeah, that's a good topic for some week. So
I couldn't agree more. I've got all kinds of things floating in my mind. So, nice meeting, guys. Thanks.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. We will see you next week. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the weather, and we'll see you next week. Bye, guys.